Hello and welcome to the Indie Beginning Podcast, episode 13. To outline or not to outline? That is the question. Many people have different writing techniques. Some people have to be in a certain place, while others only write in notebooks. I thought outlining was a necessary part of the writing process, until I learned that my co-host, my wife, doesn't outline. Listen along as we discuss this topic with last week's featured beginning author, Scott Stevens, as well as reviews left for his story on ice. If you missed episode 12 or have not read the book, you can head back to that episode or purchase the book. Today's conversation is being fueled by our friends over at Burial Grounds Coffee Company. Head over to burialgrounds.coffee and grab a bag of one of their specialty flavors after the show. You can never go wrong with a bag of Death Star for those days you just want a straight cup of joe. Remember to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or your favorite podcast app. We can also be found on your favorite social media platform and at acnbooks.com/indie-beginning. And now, episode 13. So let's just jump right into the conversation this week. What did you think about On Ice by Scott Stevens?
I actually, in the beginning, thought that it was a lot of backstory and not a lot going forward, and then you get hooked into it once the character actually meets up with his SWAT team. I was excited to hear more, and then you were done.
I didn't mind that part. My problem, and it wasn't really a problem, is just when I got to the end of it, I didn't believe what was happening. But at the same time, that's a great thing because I really wanted to know how it was going to work. Like, I have to go read that book now to figure out how these two are going to get together, and is there going to be a positive outcome, a bad outcome? Like, where is it going to go? So at first I was a little, put off by it. But then when I thought about it, I need to know. Like, it was almost genius to me, like just how off it was. How did other people feel about it? I know we read a bunch of praise for this author in this story.
Good book, wrote. All I can say is after reading thousands of books, this is the first time in ages that I had no idea what was going to happen. Think you have it figured out? Read it to the end. You won't.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Like, I didn't see how it was coming, and I don't see where it's going, but I just need to know. I'm going to find out. Susan said, this book had a very unique plot, which never faltered. The main characters, John and Tammy, were engaging and interesting, and I found myself looking forward to each new chapter. I'm anxiously awaiting this new author's next book.
From Jane, I bought this book and read it in a day. From the get-go, I was hooked. The characters, likable, intriguing, and enthralling. The precision and the dedication in the easy, readable style shows more of a seasoned author than a new one.
And it just keeps going on from there. There's been nothing but 5 stars reviews, except there was one 1-star review from Mrs. TJ on Goodreads. And I don't usually call out reviewers, but there was no follow-up, no explanation. There are times that I don't leave feedback, I'll admit it, but that's only when I'm giving like a 4 or 5. If I rate it 4 or 5, I'm sure people understand that I love the book. I'm not saying that I'm a busy man, but sometimes I'm just in a hurry. But if you're leaving a 1-star review, state why you hate the book so much. Even if you don't want to help the author, help me, the reader. Why should I not like this book? Maybe you don't like police or thrillers or women named Tammy. How am I supposed to know why I should avoid it? I mean, just a little explanation goes a long way for me. In doing the last episode, we found out that the author doesn't really use outlines that much. I had my own opinions about this, so I did some research. Joseph Finder talked about outlining in his Writer's Tips blog post, Outline or Not. He brought up that there's no right or wrong answer. All of us writers make up our own rules as we go. There's no one way to do it.
Well, I agree with there's no right answer or wrong answer to outline or not. I don't use outlines. Scott very rarely uses outlines, and a lot of the authors that I work with do. They need to have a systematic way for every single sentence to go through.
And Joseph Finder brought that up too. He said authors like Harlan Coben, they don't use outlines. He knows the ending before he starts, but when he's getting there, he knows the beginning, middle, and end, and he just gets there. There's some other authors that are like me. Robert Ludlum, as Joseph Finder points out, said that his outlines could be 100 or 150 pages, half as long as some of his books.
That's insane.
That's a lot.
Yeah, there's no way I'd be able to keep track even in an outline. For me, And even in a 150-page outline, that's like the entire story.
Well, like you said before, even John Grisham said that he spends more time on his outlines than he does on actually writing the book. But, and here's my opinion, and Joseph Finder says this too, even if I'm writing something and I don't use an outline, I have still thought about it over and over and over in my head. I have an outline in my head. I'm pretty sure I know where this is going.
Before we go on to the next article, for those not in the know,
and that was me before reading the article.
Pantsing or without pants refers to making things up as you go.
And this article comes from mythicscribes.com. In both of these articles, the link will be in our show notes. But this particular article was written by Philip Overby. You said you don't write an outline, so why don't you start with why pantsing is good?
It's the only way that I know how to write. A lot of times I have one single item in my head, either a sentence, a word, a name, a character, and I just, like if you were painting, I just start with that one simple thing and then work around it until you get an entire picture. I never have an idea as to what my characters are going to step into when they open a door, and that keeps me interested in what I'm doing. It makes hours fly by, and whether it works or it doesn't work, then you can fine-tune it.
So yeah, Phillips was saying pantsing could just be fun. And I'm sure he meant that in every way. But you can explore wherever your mind takes you. You can always go back and edit later. So you can get some stuff down on that page. And he had some reasons why pantsing is bad. And this is where I agree too. It's harder to pants exclusively in fantasy writing. There's lots of stuff you have to remember when you're doing that. World building, creatures. I mean, there's so many backstories too. And this is my favorite. This is how this got into the podcast. Philip states, your writing may be a garbled mess of Minotaur space pirates fighting intergalactic squids, Martian ninjas, and comic-spewing trans-dimensional spider dragons. I want to read that book. So why outlining is good? Philip states, it's great for fantasy stories with a lot of information to keep up with. It provides you with an easier way to get the actual writing down, and you could do it anywhere without the fear of arrest. Okay, that was Philip's last pants joke.
Why outlining is bad. It can choke your creativity flow if there's too much kowtowing to it. It can take away the mystique of writing and exploring your story gradually. And too much word building can cause the world to spin out of orbit and become a rogue planet.
So what did Scott have to say about his outlining or not outlining process? You mentioned that you don't use outlines when writing. What do you think started this?
I created an outline for On Ice, but as I started writing the story, the more it continued, the more it unfolded, the further away from the original outline it got. That didn't necessarily mean it was bad. Actually, it was quite better. So as the story continued forward, I got further and further away from the outline I had. That didn't mean the story itself, as far as the plot goes, changed, but the things that led up to it, the details, things like that, were actually better. So I ended up getting away from the outline completely. I learned from that, and for Twister Town, I didn't do an outline at all. By the time On Ice was finished, the outline was completely trashed. I hadn't looked at it probably over the last half of the book. I do keep a list of characters close by with their details and all that stuff, so I can, refer to it when I need to. But as far as an outline goes, I don't even bother anymore, because things change as the story unfolds, and I really don't see the need for doing it.
So he started an outline and then drifted away. Have you ever tried to outline?
The most I do with outlining is if I come up with a sentence that I absolutely want to have somewhere in there, I'll write it down, and then it sits in a drawer until I find a spot for it.
Yeah, see, I'd rather have the extra notes and then come back to them in a couple of years. Can you think of any advantages or disadvantages to not outlining your stories?
There's a lot of advantages and disadvantages to not using an outline when you're writing a story. The advantage is obviously you're free to go wherever you want with the story. If you write an outline and you're not, contractually obligated to somebody, you're always free to move away from your original outline anyway. But if you don't have one, you're free to just let your mind do the work for you and let it flow through your fingers. The disadvantage to not having an outline, they probably far outweigh the advantages, because it's very easy to forget things. If you take a break from writing a week, 2 weeks, what have you, when you come back, sometimes you might forget what happened. Once you hit chapter 40, you might forget what happened in chapter 10. And it's very easy to do that. And that's where your editing process is very, very important, because I've gone back. It happened in On Ice. It happened in Twister Town. I went back and saw some things that I had changed as the story progressed, and I didn't realize that it had changed because of not using an outline. It's not a bad thing. You just have to be very careful and pay very close attention when you're editing, because you don't want to have that huge glaring error in the middle of your story that everybody's going to read.
Do you still use notes? For example, if you have something you must have in a story, an idea, a phrase, an action, do you have it somewhere so that you make sure it gets put into your writing?
Yeah, I still use notes. I take notes continually as I write the story. I do my work in Word documents. So as I'm writing, when I come up with ideas, for the future, I write them at the bottom in probably like a footnote format, underneath what I'm currently writing. And I do this so it's constantly there. I know what's going to happen, and I won't forget it. If I'm working on chapter 3, as I'm working on chapter 3, I get the idea of what I want to do in chapter 4, 5, and 6. I write those notes right below that. Sometimes I'll get, out of chapter 3, something will come to me that I want to happen in chapter 27, and I write those notes, right below there. So, I don't know if you want to consider it a guideline or not, but as the story unfolds, I do take notes, so I don't forget. Before starting the story, obviously you get an idea from something. What I do, instead of sitting down and writing out your outline and with the details and stuff, I just think about it for 2, 3, 4 weeks. I have the basic idea, and I just think about it as I'm going through everyday life. And when I feel comfortable that I have the storyline that I want and it's complete, then I sit down and I start to write and let my mind do the work. For instance, Twister Town came to me in a dream. I woke up one morning and remembered I had dreamed the plot of Twister Town, the night before. I thought it out 2 to 3 weeks and came up with the storyline and the basic characters that I wanted, and I did all that before I sat down to actually start writing it.
That's my worst fear, just forgetting. I have that berry brain, and I'm sorry to everybody who's not in my family, but if you are, you understand the metaphor. There's so many times that I come up with a great idea and lose it because I can't reach for my phone or write something down. I'm a truck driver, so I'll spend 6 hours a week just driving in one direction. I can't take notes. I can't even grab my phone to hit my recorder. I mean, it's just not a safe way to drive. So lots of times I forget what I wanted to do in my writing.
Yeah, and I'll take notes that way. I mean, like ACN is for a 4 book series, and I can't possibly at all times remember what happened in book 1 to incorporate it into book 4. So I might write down 1 or 2 sentences just to refresh my memory.
Yeah, that's all I need. I just need to be able to. I should probably look into that voice activated thing on my phone, but it never works. Do you feel that freestyle writing changes character development or plot as opposed to, say, outline story writing does?
Do I feel that it changes plot development? It does. Absolutely it does, but for the better. As you go along, you come up with better ideas. Experience in life is everything. Writing is the same thing. Writing a good fiction story, it's exactly the same thing. The more experience you have, the more involved you get into your story, the better the ideas that you get. As the characters unfold, the story unfolds, you'll get better ideas of what you want to do, what works better in certain situations. So I think it actually helps development because everything is free and anything can happen. anything can happen. I'm working on The Gardener, for instance. I currently I'm chapter 27, 28, 29, something like that in The Gardener. Now what I have here is Detective Evan Burke, who's the main character. He's investigating a murder. I know who has been murdered, but I don't know who did it. I'm in chapter 27 and I still don't know who did it. All that will work itself out. I have a couple of ideas. There's a couple of characters that have already been introduced. That could be the guilty party. But as the story unfolds, the story will tell me who did it. I won't tell the story, if that makes any sense. As everything unfolds, and that is, I think, the great thing of doing it the way I do it. Character and plot development unfolds itself. I don't necessarily have to know. As I tell the story and everything continues to move forward, the story will dictate to me, the development that it follows and who did it, who didn't do it, and so on.
Do you have any advice for indie authors? What have you learned from your writing adventure that you'd like to pass on for those beginning their journey?
What advice do I have for indie authors? Quit now. Quit while you're ahead. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. It's hard. You have to know that it's a hard, frustrating road. Don't think for a single minute that it's not. I never thought when I was writing on ice, I never thought that the easiest part of the equation was going to be actually writing the book. I thought that was going to be the hardest part. I was so wrong. I was so ignorant to everything that went on and takes place in the book world, in the publishing world. It's crazy. You have to prepare for a very long and frustrating road. You have to have a lot of patience. Um, you can't rely on other people to do your stuff for you. Nobody's going to do things the way you want them to. Nobody's going to do things in the time frame that you want them to. Nothing is going to happen overnight. The only time that's ever going to happen is if you're lucky enough to hook up with a legitimate literary agency or a legitimate publishing company. They will do stuff for you. Nobody else will. You have to do it on your own. I do all of my own promotions, engagements, appearances, book signings, everything. I'm my own agent, and it leads to a lot of frustration. You just have to be persistent and you have to be patient. That's really all there is to it. Don't expect something to happen overnight because there's no way that's just not going to happen. Everything is a very slow, methodical process. If you can accept that, you'll be okay. You also have to make good contacts and friends within the business. Jamie Engel is a good friend of mine. She wrote the Clifton Chase and the Arrow of Light, the Dredge. She also wrote the toilet papers. I talk to her a lot. We bounce ideas off each other. We share information. We share contacts. It's good to have someone else in the business who's dealing with the same things you are. She's further along in the process than I am. She has more books out, but she's also an independent author, and she deals with the exact same things. So it's good to have somebody that you can talk to, and sharing contacts and ideas and information is very, very important. She's introduced me to a lot of people. I've introduced her to some people that I knew. That constant respect among fellow authors is very important, and you'll learn a lot of things, and it will help you with your process in getting your books out in front of the people that you want. The main thing is just prepare for a long haul and accept the fact that it's not going to be easy. You're not going to get instant results, but if you're persistent and you don't give up, you can get it done. But it's just promotion, promotion, promotion. That's the biggest thing. Do that. Take care of your own stuff, and don't give up. That's the thing. If you want it, if you want your story to be out there, if you want people to read it, and you want to get it in front of as many people as you can, patience and persistence. That's it. That's all I can say. You're going to have a lot of frustrations. Expect that, and as long as you expect it and you can accept that, you'll be fine. So just don't give up. That's the biggest thing that I have to say. Be persistent. Follow up. on anything that you have. If you talk to somebody and they tell you they're going to get back to you in 2 weeks, you don't hear back from them in 2 weeks, give them an extra week and then get back to them. Don't be afraid to follow up with people. Put in the work and, you never know. Good things may happen.
I'm really glad Scott didn't sugarcoat the writing industry. Finding representation is hard, and many times we have to do the legwork ourselves. You're self-published, Marie. Were you expecting this amount of work with A Charming Nightmare?
Oh, absolutely not. You can't, I tell everybody, you can't do this and expect to make money. Not everybody is Stephen King or J.K. Rowling overnight. Some people never become that. It's a job of love. You love what you do. And now that we're in the middle, or actually at the end of the second book, I still absolutely love being my only go-to person for every aspect of it, not having to give that control to somebody else.
Yeah, I can see not wanting to give people control, because I hear all the time that publishers and not editors, but publishers, agents, they want you to change your story, and sometimes not the way you want to.
And you can be more creative. Like what I learned from traditionally published versus indie published is you don't have a say in your cover. I have 100% say, well, not 100% because my cover artist will tell me no.
Yeah, Angie's not letting you have 100% of your...
But I can still have a word in where most times you won't even see your cover until it's about to go to publishing.
So what's the word, Marie? Do we outline or do we not outline?
I don't think I'll ever outline.
Nah, you have to outline. That's marriage for you. 100% disagreements. Let us know if you guys outline or don't outline. How do you feel about the process? Purchase your copy of On Ice on Amazon. You, the listener, may join in on these conversations by sending Indie Beginning an audio review of each story episode. Simply record your thoughts into your phone and send it along to reviews.indiebeginning@gmail.com or write a review on our ACM Books website. Become part of our featured authors' stories by helping them learn and grow. This episode was made possible by Burial Grounds Coffee Company. All reviews were taken from Amazon, Goodreads, or acnbooks.com. Head there to read them in full. Music found in this week's episode was written and performed by Jesse Spillane and is titled Cityscape Backdrop. Please take a moment to rate and review our show on your favorite podcast platform. Reviews are such an important part of the growth of any project. I am your host, Benjamin Frankie, asking everyone to read more books, be the best possible you, and to simply enjoy this wonderful life. Thanks for listening.